तत्सद अद्यपोषमासी मकर राशिस्ते भास्करे कृष्ण पक्षे पंचमं तिथौ यथा शब्दविधिनां श्रीरामकृष्ण देवस्य पार्षद भक्त आश्रित जन हृदयेषु नित्यलीला भाव विकासनाय निखिल जनगण मध्ये जन्म तन्महात्म जशो विद्धये तत्प्रीतये च गुरुवादी नाना देवता पूजा पूर्वकं श्रीमद् विवेकानंदस्य शुभ जन्म तिथि निमित्तक सर्वदेव देवी स्वरूप श्री रामकृष्ण पूजनं तदीय श्री चरणाश्रितो अहम करिष्यामि। ओम संकल्प तीर्थाय सिद्धंतु सिद्धय संतु मनोरथा भक्ति ज्ञान उदाय अयमारंभ शुभाय भवतु। ओम एते गंधपुष्पे आधर्षष्ठादिभ्य नमः। नमः ओम गंगे च जमुने चैव गोदावरी सरस्वती नर्मदे सिंधु कावेरी जलस्मिन् सन्निधिं कुरु। ओम द्वारदेवताभ्य नमः। ओम एतगंधपुष्पे द्वारदेवताभ्य नमः। ओम एतगंधपुष्पे ब्रह्मणे नमः। ओम एतगंधपुष्पे वास्तुपुरुषाय नमः। ओम एतगंधपुष्पे विघ्नाय नमः। ओम एतगंधपुष्पे महालक्ष्माय नमः। ओम श्रीं एतगंधपुष्पे महालक्ष्मै नमः। ओम वै एतगंधपुष्पे सरस्वत्यै नमः। ओम एतगंधपुष्पे विघ्नेशाय नमः। ओम शां एतगंधपुष्पे क्षेत्रपालाय नमः। ओम गां एतगंधपुष्पे गंगावै नमः। ओम श्यां एतगंधपुष्पे यमुनाय नमः। ओम ह्रीं एतगंधपुष्पे अस्त्राय नमः। ओम एतगंधपुष्पे मंडलाय नमः। ओम एतगंधपुष्पे भूतादिभ्यो नमः। ओम एतगंधपुष्पे माशभक्तबलाय नमः। ओम एष माशभक्तबली भूतादिभ्यो नमः। ओम भूताप्रेतापिशाचस्य ये ओम भूताप्रेतापिशाचस्य ये वसन्त अत्र भूतले त्रिगिन्नन्तु मया दत्यं बलिमेनं प्रसादितम्। ओम पूजिता गन्धपुष्पदैर्वालिभिस्तर्पितस्तथा देशदस्माद् निश्चित पूजां पश्यन्तु मत्कृताम्। ओम अस्त्राय फट, ओम अस्त्राय फट, ओम अस्त्राय फट। ओम सर्वविज्ञानुत्साराय ओम फट स्वाहा। ओम अपसर्पन्तु ते भूता ये भूता भुवि संस्थिता ये भूता विनकर्तारस्ते नश्यन्तु शिवगया। ओम रक्ष रक्ष ओम फट स्वाहा। ओम ह्रीं एतगन्धपुष्पे आदर्शसादिभ्यो नमः। ओम अश्य आसनोपवेशन मंत्रस्य मेरुपृष्ठऋषि सुतरं छन्दकुर्मदेवता आसनोपवेशन विनियोगः। ओम पृथ्वी त्वया धृता लोका देवी त्वं विष्णुधृता त्वं च धारयामाग्निक्तं पवित्रं कुरु चासनम्। ह्रीं एतगन्धपुष्पे आदर्शकाय कमलासनाय नमः। ओं गुरुभ्य नमः। ओं परमगुरुभ्य नमः। ओं परपरगुरुभ्य नमः। ओं परमिष्टिगुरुभ्य नमः। ओं गणेशाय नमः। ओं सर्वदेवदेवीश्वरूपाय श्रीरामकृष्णाय नमः। हेशों आं हुं फट स्वाहा। क्लीं ओं फट। ओं एतगन्धपुष्पे नमः। ओं एतगन्धपुष्पे नमः। ओं एतगन्धपुष्पे नमः। ओम पुष्पे पुष्पे महापुष्पेषु पुष्पे पुष्पशंभवे पुष्पचयावतीर्णे च हुं फट् स्वाहा। ओम पुष्पे पुष्पे महापुष्पेषु पुष्पे पुष्पशंभवे पुष्पचयावतीर्णे च हुं फट् स्वाहा। ओम ओं सर्वदेवदेवी स्वरूपाय श्रीरामकृष्णाय नमः। ओम सर्वदेवदेवी स्वरूपाय श्रीरामकृष्णाय नमः। ओम सर्वदेवदेवी स्वरूपाय श्रीरामकृष्णाय नमः। फट 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 फट। अस्त्राय फट। ओम ओं 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 फट। Ong wing ong kong wing kong chong wing chong tong wing tong fong wing fong yang shong wing shong. Wrong. Om Durge Durge Rakshmi Swaha. Om Ang Hum Fat Swaha. Om Bhuta Shingata Chiro Shushuna Patana Jiva Shiva Parama Shiva Padeyo Yami Swaha. Om Yang Linga Sharirang Shosha Shosha Swaha. Om Rang Sankucha Sharirang Daha Daha Swaha. Om Parama Shiva Shushuna Patana Mula Singata Mula Solasa Jwala Jwala Prajwala Prajwala Sohang Hangsa Swaha. Ang Hum Fat Swaha. Ang Hum Fat Swaha. Ang Hum Fat Swaha. Om Vim Shabda Vishnu Vishnu Krishna Namo. Ang Hring Krong Yang Rang Lang Vang Shang 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 Hum Hang Shri Krishna Devataya Prana Iha Pranaha. Ang Hring Krong Yang Rang Lang Vang Shang 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 Hum Hang Shri Krishna Devataya Jiva Iha Sthitaha. Ang Hring Krong Yang Rang Lang Vang Shang 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 Hum Hang Shri Krishna Devataya Sarvendriyani. Ang Hring Krong Yang Rang Lang Vang Shang 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 Hum Hang Shri Krishna Devataya Vang Manasha Chakshutva Kashutrograna Prana Iha Gatya Shukham Chirang Tishtantu Swaha. Om Ashamatrika Mantrasya Brahma Rishi Gayatri Chanda Devi Matrika Saraswati Devata Hala Vijanishwara Shaktaha Abhaktam Kilakam Sarva Vishya Siddhali Vinyashavini Yogaha. Om Brahmane Risha Namaha Om Gayatri Chandasya Namaha Om Matrika Saraswati Devatai Namaha Om Hala Vijabha Namaha Om Sarva Shakti Namaha Om Abhakta Kilakaya Namaha. Om Kong Kong Gong 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 Ang Om Ishtabang Namaha Ing Chong Chong Jong 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 Ing Tarjani Bhyang Swaha Om Tong Tong Dong 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 Om Mondhama Bang Basharing Tong Tong Dong 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 Om Anamika Bang Hum Om Pong Pong Bang 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 Om Konishta Bang Boshat Om Yang Rang Lang Bang Shong 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 Hong Ling Shong Of Fartal Pishta Bang Mastraya Fat Om Kong Kong Gong 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 Ang Hidaya Namaha Ing Chong Chong Jong 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 Ing Shirashi Swaha Om Tong Tong Dong 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 Om Shikhaya Bashating Tong Tong Dong 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 Om Kapachai Hum Om Pong Pong Bang 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 Om Netratraya Boshat Om Yang Rang Lang Bang Shong 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 Hong Ling Shong Of Fartal Pishta Bang Mastraya Fat Om Vim Shabadeva Devi Shurupaya Shri Krishna Namaha. Om Vim Shabadeva Devi Shurupaya Shri Krishna Namaha. Om Vim Shabadeva Devi Shurupaya Shri Krishna Namaha. Om Ete Vivekananda Divya Namaha. Om Ete Vivekananda Divya Namaha. Om Ete Vivekananda Divya Namaha. Om Ete Ganda Vishri Ete Vivekananda Divya Namaha. Om Ete Ganda Vishri Ete Dhutipataya Devaya Shri Vishnave Namaha. Om Ete Ganda Vishri Ete Sampradana Pujane Devebhya Namaha.
Good morning and welcome. Today we are celebrating the birth of Swami Vivekananda and the advent of the great said today we're celebrating the birth of Swami Vivekananda. The actual Tithi day is on the 25th, but we are celebrating it today so that on Sunday so that more people can attend and observe it. And I will read the story of the birth of Swami Vivekananda. And this is from the life of Swami Vivekananda by his Eastern and Western disciples. So whoever knows the longing of a mother that a son should be born to her enters into the world of Bhuvaneshwari, the wife of Vishwanath Datta. Although she had been blessed with motherhood at an early age, her first child, a son, and her second, a daughter, had died in their childhood. Her next three children were all daughters. Her Mohini, also called Haramani, Swarnamai, and another who also died in childhood. So she longed for a son to carry on the family tradition, to be the link forged out of the materials of love and suffering between the past and the future. It had been the practice of Hindu women down the ages to place their wants and complaints before the household deity and to practice austerities while waiting to receive the blessings of the Lord. Thus, as Bhuvaneshwari went about her daily task, she prayed silently that her desire might be fulfilled. Now it was customary in those days, and still is, for one in dire need or anxious that some special event should come to pass, to make offerings and sacrifices to Shiva in Varanasi. Those who lived a long distance from that holy city could make their offerings to a relative or friend who might be resident there. Accordingly, Bhuvaneshwari Devi wrote to an old aunt of the Datta family in Varanasi, asking her to make the necessary offerings and prayers to Vireshwar Shiva, that a son might be born to her. It was arranged that on Mondays, the aunt would offer worship to Vireshwar Shiva, or Bhuvaneshwari would practice special austerities on those same days. It is said that by observing a vow of this sort for 1 year, one is blessed with a son. Thus Bhuvaneshwari was content to wait in perfect assurance that her prayers would be answered. She spent her days in practicing japa and meditation. She observed fast and intensified her many other austerities, her whole soul given over to constant recollectedness, her heart fixed in love on the Lord Shiva. Often did her mind go to Varanasi, uniting in thought with the venerable aunt, as the latter poured the sacred Ganga water on the symbol of Shiva, or worshipped him with flowers and mantras. One night, Bhuvaneshwari had a vivid dream. She had spent the day in the shrine, and as evening deepened into night, she fell asleep. The household was hushed in silence and rest. Then, in the highest heavens, the hour struck. The time had come for the pious woman to receive the special grace of the Lord. In her dream, she saw the Lord Shiva rouse himself from his meditation and take the form of a male child who was to be her son. She awoke. Could this ocean of light in which she found herself bathed be but a dream? Shiva, Shiva, thou fulfillest in various ways the prayers of thy devotees. From the inmost soul of Bhuvaneshwari, a joyous prayer rolled up, for she was confident that her long months of supplication were over, and that the vision was the announcement that her prayers were to be answered. Her faith was justified, for in due course a son was born to her. The light of the world dawned for the first time upon the future Swami Vivekananda on Monday, January 12th, 1863. It was the holy morning hour, 33 minutes and 33 seconds after 6, a few minutes before sunrise. At the time of his birth, the constellation Sagittarius was rising in the east, the moon was in the constellation of Virgo, the planet Jupiter was in the 11th house, and Saturn was in the 10th from that of his birth. It was the 7th day of the new moon, Krishna Saptami, and as chance would have it, the last day of the 9th Bengali month Posh, known as Makara Sankranti Day, a great Hindu festival. The millions of men and women who were observing the festival unknowingly greeted the newborn babe with prayers and worship. They little know that he had just been born, who was to usher in a new age of glory for his country, who was to reorganize the spiritual and national consciousness of India, and who was to become a great apostle of St. Paul, preaching unto the world another gospel of redemption, namely the message of Vedanta. And only a few miles north of Calcutta, in the garden of Dakshineshwar, a great seer was waiting for the coming of this babe, who was to grow into manhood to carry on his great task. So thank you.
Let us offer our pranam to Swami Vivekananda. Swami Vivekananda pranam. From the book Suprabhatam, the first page, Monday, so there you will find it. Suprabhatam, first page. Namasriyatirajaaya Vivekananda Suraye Satchit Sukha Swarupaya Swamine Tapaharine Parutatve Sadalino Rama Krishna Samagaya Yo Dharma Sthapanarato Biresham Tam Namamyaham Biresham Tam Namamyaham. My salutations to Swami Vivekananda, that who, through always established in supreme consciousness, is engaged in establishing religion as dictated by Sri Ramakrishna. We will have Swami Vivekananda Dhyanam. Om Vishwacharyam Yagadvandam Vivekananda Rupinam Vireshwarat Samutpannam Shaptarshi Mandalagatam Jnana Bhakti Pradataram Padmaksha Gaura Vigraham Dhyayet Devam Yati Punjam Loka Kalyana. The teacher of the world, the one who is revered by the world, who incarnated by the grace of Lord Shiva, and from the Shaptarshi Mandala in the form of Vivekananda, who arrived to confer Jnana Bhakti, the knowledge and devotion for the welfare of humankind. I meditate on him, the lotus-eyed, glorious cluster of the divine light. Jnana Bhakti Pradataram. Those who know the life of Swami Vivekananda, they will wonder that he was the full of knowledge, jnana. He first brought the yoga and Vedanta in the West. He introduced, and not only he introduced Hinduism to the world. Not only that, he actually reconstructed the whole Hinduism. Because of the long years and years of the practices, sometimes it happens, it's not 100 years or 200 years, thousands of years. So obviously, the process accumulated some of the things which were not truly Hinduism. Some of the local practices, some of the ideas of some local teachers, that all incorporated in the main body of the Hinduism. And that's why people were confused about Hinduism. The Swami Vivekananda came and he completely reshaped the Hinduism. One of his disciples, Sister Nivedita, in her introduction to the complete works of Swami Vivekananda, she mentioned these. When he started and then when he completed, Hinduism was reborn. This is the beauty of the Hinduism. It's on the truth. It's on the principle. It's not any person. Though there are so many hundreds and thousands of gods and goddesses are there, the great personalities are there, but still Hinduism is on the principle, that is the Veda, and Veda says the truth, and truth is nothing but saying, I am He, I am that consciousness. So when they are offering pranam, they are telling Vishwacharyam. He is the Acharya, he is the teacher of the whole world, whole humankind. What he is teaching? It's not Hinduism, it's the truth. And what is that truth? That glimpse of the truth we find in the teachings of Jesus also, when he says, the kingdom of heaven is within you. That is the truth. The purity is always there, but we do not know. We are always trying to get the happiness. Each and every human is pursuing for the happiness, but we do not know where we will get that happiness. That path, that knowledge is called Vedanta. Now, we will offer our pranam. It's still the morning. The Swami Vivekananda Suprabhatam. He Preshthanath Sumahan Yuga Shakti Dharin. He Nitta Mukta Satatam Hi Mahabarenya. Ananda Rupa Bhuvibhai Janamugdhakarin. Vishwasabira Suyate Tava Suprabhatam. He Buddha Shashvata Viveka Subodhadayin. Sattasrain Janaganan Pathadanakarin. He Mukta Sarva Janamukti Vidhanakarin. Vishwasabira Suyate Tava Suprabhatam. Bhaktischate Subidita Bhuvi Rama Krishne. Sri Rama Krishna Hridihe Sukritadhikara. He Matri Bhakta Prithivi Bijayi Dhruvam Tvam. Vishwasabira Suyate Taba Suprabhatam. He Shuddha Puta Bhuvane शुचिता विधाता रिक्तार्थपीडित जनेश्वर बुद्धिकारिन् नित्यं कृपा गलितहृत् परदुःखहारिन् विश्वस्य वीरसूयते तव सुप्रभातम् मायाविहीन भुविनो नयमोहपारे त्वं जाग्रतो हि सततं जनमुक्तिधारिन् जागर्ति मानवगण तव सुप्रभावैः विश्वस्य वीरसूयते तव सुप्रभातम् विश्वस्य वीरसूयते तव सुप्रभातम्. Swami Vivekananda introduced Vedanta, but Vivekananda's Vedanta is unique. And some of the scholars, they mentioned the Vivekananda's Vedanta as a practical Vedanta. Vedanta has a theory, and it says each soul is potentially divine, and we have to manifest that divinity. Each soul is divine. If it is so, then where is the question of sinners? He may be the person who is not understanding his divinity, may be committing some mistakes, thinking this world is permanent. And many of the people, they always go for enjoying this world, and for enjoying the world, they will be depriving others. And that is exactly what we call as sin, the papa, the mistakes. So this Swami Vivekananda said, why not serve the poor, the downtrodden, the illiterate, the oppressed? His guru, Bhagavan Sri Ramakrishna, once taught him that when he was telling that I like to close my eyes and go deep into meditation, and sometimes I will come up to eat something to keep my body, his guru, who was a great yogi himself, Bhagavan Sri Ramakrishna, he rebuked him, scolded him. And he said, why? You sing, yo kuch hai, so tu hi hai. As a Hindi bhajan is there, everything that you see is nothing but the same God. Then that young Narendra slowly grew up into Swami Vivekananda. And he himself realized that God is not residing only in the heaven, or only in the temple, or only in the books. The God is everywhere, and particularly those who are poor, who are illiterate, who are oppressed. The Vivekananda is encouraging us to go and serve them, the living gods and goddesses. And that is called practical Vedanta. Vedanta in application. We only read books, and we close our doors and windows, and we always say that we are holier than thou, and we don't ever practice that Vedanta. This is the uniqueness of the Vedanta, Swamiji, that he is giving us the practical Vedanta. Today we have assembled over here. We are worshipping the Lord in the shrine, in the temple. But at the same time, we go out to reach to the poor people, and we are not serving the poor person. We are serving the God in that form. We are giving the education to those people who are deprived. But we are not serving the poor people. We are serving the God. That is called, we are the votaries of the living gods and goddesses. This is Vivekananda. And he said, over here just we read, Riktartha pidita jane Ishara buddhikarin. Ishara buddhikarin. What the practical Vedanta teaches us? What is the application of the Vedanta? We have to think that all these people who are around me who need some help are nothing but the God. And why God needs my help? Only to purify my mind. This is called practical Vedanta. So Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Jnana Yoga are combined in Vivekananda's Vedanta. If you have this book, you will find that Vivekananda Panchakam. The books are there? To give this. Okay. Today we are having hybrid program. Some of the devotees are here present and some may be observing it. Okay, let us now chant the Vivekananda Panchakam. Anitadrisheshu bibiccha nityam tasmin samadhata ihasmalilaya viveka vairagya vishuddha chityam yoso viveki tamaham namami. Viveka jananda nimagna chityam viveka danaika vinodashilam viveka bhasa kamaniya kantim vivekinam tam satatam namami. Ritancha vijnanam adhisrayatayat nirantaram chadi madhyantahinam sukham surupam prakaroti yasya anandamurtim tamaham namami. Suryo yatha dhamhi tamo nihanti Vishnu yatha dushta jananchinati tathaiva yasya kila netralobham rupam tritapam vimukhi karoti tam deshikendram paramam pavitram vishwasya palam madhuram yatindram hitaya nrinam naramurtimantam viveka ananda aham namami. Viveka ananda aham namami. Namasriyati rajaya Vivekananda suraye Satchit sukha swarupaya Swamine Tapaharine, Swamine Tapaharine.
And now we're going to have a very interesting talk on Swami Vivekananda by Jeff Stewart.
Greetings. Thank you for those of you who traveled to be here today in this cold weather and in these times. And thank you, Swamiji, for introducing me and inviting me to talk to you here today. So my name is Jeff, and I traveled here to the Society today from my hometown in Cascade, Michigan. Cascade is near Grand Rapids in the west side of the state. Now, my family has lived in that part of Michigan for over 185 years, which is a bit unusual for an American. I'm sharing this with you because we all came from somewhere to be together here today, and I suspect that many of you here present with me and a lot of you who may be watching online weren't born in the Midwest of the United States and probably weren't born in this hemisphere. I grew up in a traditional West Michigan community and attended a Christian church with my family. The motto of this church I grew up in was open hearts and open minds, and I can share with all sincerity that where and when I grew up in West Michigan laid a foundation that enabled me to hear what Swami Vivekananda calls us to be in this day. So I hope you can indulge me for a short time to tell some stories about that. Before the pandemic, I was blessed to work in a professional field that allowed me to travel the world and help people work and make valuable things together in productive ways. In fact, beginning about 10 years ago right now, I traveled nearly 100% for my work. First all around the United States and eventually around the world to India a few years later. I traveled to India for the first time in 2014, and on the very first day, I ceased being merely a business traveler. My driver was taking me back to my hotel in Bangalore, and I noticed an image hanging from his rearview mirror. He was startled when I asked him who that was. Well, that is God, sir. I obviously looked a bit confused, and so then he said, God, Sai Baba. That was my first experience with one of the great spiritual saints of India, and that is when my short consulting journey into India got a lot bigger. In the free time I could get from my work in Bangalore, I traveled to spiritual sites throughout the region. And about a year later, I traveled to the Rajghat in Delhi, the spot of Mahatma Gandhi's cremation. Now, at the time I visited, there was a plaque at the entryway that had a quote from Gandhiji. I would like to see India free and strong so that she may offer herself as a willing and pure sacrifice for the betterment of the world. The individual, being pure, sacrifices himself for the family, the latter for the village for the district for the province for the nation, and the nation for all. I want Kudai Raj, which is the same thing as the kingdom of God, on earth. The establishment of such a Raja would not only mean the welfare of the whole Indian people, but of the whole world. Those words had a profound impact when I read them, and they provided a context for all my further journeys in India in the succeeding years. Now, a few years later, in 2017, I was consulting most of the year not in India, but in Indiana. But I was still spending a lot of my free hours reading and studying spiritual saints in India when I had a spark ignited within me. That spark was Swami Vivekananda, standing in front of a vast map of the entire subcontinent. It was through that transmission that I discovered that at the end of that year would be the 125th anniversary of Vivekananda's arrival to Kanyakumari at the southern tip of India to what is now known as Vivekananda Rock. There was no question in my mind that I was to travel there, and at the end of the year, I arrived in Kanyakumari. It was there in 1892 that Swamiji spent 3 days in meditation and hatched the vision that would consume the rest of his life and establish the basis for the work that we are gathered here today to acknowledge. Only 9 months after he was in solitude at that last southern bit of Indian rock, he arrived only a few miles from where we are gathered here today and gave his famous speech to the Parliament of World Religions. So my purpose in sharing this story with you is not to retell the history of Swami Vivekananda's journey from India to the West and back, but to share the extraordinary commitment he took on from Kanyakumari, how that commitment was shared to us through what he did and what he taught, and how his very life is an invitation to us to project our own humanity in service of the greatest ideals, and to project those ideals themselves towards something that the world currently can't imagine, but so desperately needs. Now, if you have not been to Kanyakumari, allow me to share the experience of visiting there. Kanyakumari is a small city at the very southern tip of India in Tamil Nadu. If you're there early in the morning, you can stand with thousands of people that gather there every morning and see the sun rise over the Indian Ocean and set at night over the Arabian Sea. There are 2 large rocks about a quarter mile off the shore. One has a tall statue of the Tamil poet Tiruvannamalai. The other is Vivekananda Rock. So today it's required to take a passenger ferry to visit either of those rocks. The first day of my visit to the area, all of the ferries were canceled because of high winds and rough seas. The waters off the shore are known to be frequented by sharks. When Vivekananda arrived in Kanyakumari in 1892, none of those barriers were impediments to him. He swam out to the rock and spent 3 days there alone in meditation, and swam back to devote the rest of his days to the quest he had just taken on. That he even survived such a feat is miraculous, but no more miraculous than the 3 years of wandering and learning of India that preceded it, and no more miraculous than the events that brought him before thousands at the opening of the Parliament of World Religions in Chicago only 9 months later. In fact, at that stage of life, I don't think Swamiji encountered anything that would occur to him as insurmountable. An impediment that may seem insurmountable to us seemed to have occurred to him as just something interesting along the way. And to say the least, Swami Vivekananda lived a very interesting life. So many of you may be familiar with the summation of one of Swamiji's first speeches after he gave after he returned to India in 1897. Life is short, but the soul is immortal and eternal, and one thing being certain, death. Let us therefore take up a great ideal and give up our whole life to it. That oft-quoted sentence has been an inspiration to many who have studied Swamiji's life and works. But that phrase alone can't begin to describe a force that Swamiji was able to cultivate, not just within himself, but within countless others. A force is the only way I can describe it. As I explored his speeches, I discovered something that amazes me every time I read it. I'm not given much to talking about plans. I prefer to do and show and then talk about my plans. I have my plans and mean to work on them if the Lord wills it, if life is given to me. I do not know whether I shall succeed or not, but it is a great thing to take up a grand ideal in life and then give up one's whole life to it. For what otherwise is the value of life? Subordinating it to one high ideal is the only value life has. This is the great work to be done. If you think of any work difficult, then do not come here. Through the grace of God, all paths become easy. Your work is to serve the poor and miserable without any distinction of caste or color, and you have no need to think about the results. Your duty is to go on working, and then everything will follow itself. My method of work is to construct and not to pull down. So it's amazing to consider that from the point he hatched his vision at Kanyakumari to his journeys to Chicago and the West, and upon his return to India to build a machinery for human development, Vivekananda never had a big upfront plan. His was a life of constant iteration. Be and make, let this be our motto, Swamiji proclaimed, and that is how he lived his life for us. Vivekananda never accepted anything as the truth until he could observe it empirically through experience. Then he would share that experience with all, teaching us how to be and make as well. The impact of this work can be found from the biggest cities to the most rural villages in India and with us here today. Swamiji modeled his behavior upon that of his own guru, Sri Ramakrishna. Swamiji said that Ramakrishna came to teach the religion of today, constructive, not destructive. He had to go afresh to nature to ask for facts, and he got scientific religion, which never says believe, but see. I see, and you too can see. Use the same means, and you will reach the same vision. God will come to everyone, and harmony is within the reach of all. How Ramakrishna arrived at this method is through iterating himself. For 12 years, Sri Ramakrishna continuously iterated and tested himself through multiple spiritual paths, and through continuous iteration of his own being, showed that God is infinite, and the paths to God are infinite. So here we are today in 2022 in the Midwest of the United States, observing the birthday of our blessed Swamiji. I was speaking to a group at a Christian church a while back, and someone asked me why there were so many spiritual saints in India and why so many people travel there to learn and experience part of it. My response was that they practice and have been practicing it for millennia. Here in the United States, we are quite good at science and innovation, and especially good at exploiting science and innovation to generate wealth and material well-being, because we've always practiced it. We practice it every day. The structure of American life is very much set up to exploit this focus. The Columbian Exposition that hosted the first Parliament of World Religions that drew Swamiji here in 1893 was very much a demonstration of that quality to the entire world. Americans revel in seeing our plans and ideals, and especially our ownership of seeing our plans and ideals disseminate far and wide. We swell with pride and exceptionalism when our goods reach far and reach far quickly. We reinvent ourselves with each passing generation and then seek the world to mirror whatever new face we've created. To this day, people, including, I suspect, many of the people here present with us today, travel from all over the world to avail what American society has to offer in that realm. But when Swamiji traveled here and lived among us, he was offering another kind of pioneering that most Americans are not so familiar with. Where American genius has been focused on manifesting innovation, wealth, and prosperity, Swamiji offered genius in manifesting our own humanity to come face to face with God. Where Americans had mastered expansion and increase and exploitation of resources and knowledge and output, Swamiji offered renunciation and knowledge so sacred that no one ought to sell it. Swamiji taught to always take the position of the giver. Give everything and look for no return. Give love, give help, give service, give everything you can, but keep out of the barter. Give out your own bounty as God gives to us. So how can an invitation like that show up today for us? First of all, we the living today, we the projection of an ideal so great that we choose to give our life to it, make certain that we push and move our own humanity to the full God-given capacity of life itself. Our primary task in life is to exploit the gift of life and become fully alive. It is not enough to earn a living or build a career or a business or a brand or a movement. You must project your life. Doctrines, ideas, institutions count for little compared with the spark of the divine that lies within each person. And the more that this is developed in your own life, the more powerful you are for good. Then inside your own life, wherever you choose to inhabit in the world, multiply your own humanity by adding people to it. This was the basis of the vision that Swamiji hatched on that rock in Kanyakumari. And he lived it by sharing his entire being freely in the West. He tossed himself among anyone that would come to listen to them. So before the pandemic, I was able to spend a great deal of time in India. And what I've missed most while we have been locked down from each other is that in a nation of 1.3 billion people, it's easy to add more people to your world. Our means of healing sectarianism, division, and separation is to uncover the spark of divinity in all by choosing to make things together that generate life and well-being. Sri Ramakrishna showed us that the paths to God are infinite, and our task is to invite people to journey on those infinite paths, and within that journey to uncover and polish their own God-given capacity to project life itself. Now, I shared with you how a vision of Vivekananda led me to travel to Kanyakumari. Let me tell you how that story played out. I continued to travel and work in India, and at the end of 2019, I was consulting with a client in Calcutta. I was staying in the Newtown area, on the east side of the city. And a couple days after arriving there, I took an early morning walk along the road in front of my hotel. And as I ended my return walk, I noticed something in the bushes in the median. There was a statue there. Now, why would someone hide a statue in the bushes like that? So I walked across the street to get a better look and found myself standing in front of Vivekananda, who was gazing across the street toward the Vivekananda, a major new educational institution being built by the Ramakrishna Mission at that location. The main building its front is being built as an exact replica of the current Art Institute of Chicago, the same building where Swamiji delivered his famous address in Chicago. Having invited me to deepen my knowledge of the people of India, and after my own journeys throughout the country, I had been guided to that place. 3 months later, in March 2020, I was back there to continue my consulting work. Now, if that date rings a bell, you might have a clue as to what was going to happen. In March of 2020, the pandemic became global, and Prime Minister Modi gave 24 hours notice that international air traffic would be stopped. I had a decision to make, and at that time, sitting there in India reading the news, I could see that my home in the state of Michigan was at then early a hotspot for the pandemic. So I chose to stay in Calcutta for the time being, not even dreaming that my lockdown in that hotel room would stretch on for 4.5 months. So when that became apparent that I was going to be there for a long time, I made a conscious decision to forego binge watching television series and treat that time as a gift. I used the great hangout, as a friend called it in India, to immerse myself in the study of the lives of Swami Vivekananda, Sri Ramakrishna, and Sarada Devi. Every day, as I gazed out upon Vivekananda's statue right across the street from where I was staying. At the end of July 2020, I was finally able to travel back to the United States. It took 6 flights and over 41 hours to reach home, and as my last flight was landing, it passed nearly over the home I was born in and grew up in Cascade, Michigan, an area where my family had lived for 6 generations before me. As the pandemic had brought an extended end to my life as a world traveling consultant, and as my devotion to the lives of the Holy Trio had deepened, Cascade and West Michigan have once again become my home. That is something that I couldn't have even made up even a few months before that when I traveled to India at the beginning of 2020. Now, my ancestors and my family arrived in West Michigan in the mid-1800s. And about that time, the family of a woman named Christine Greenstidel moved to Detroit on the eastern side of the state. And when she turned 17 years old, she became a school teacher in the Detroit public school system. When Swami Vivekananda visited Detroit in 1894, she was drawn to attend all of his lectures. She described his voice as awakening the voice of God within her. She traveled again to attend his lectures at Thousand Island Park in New York, where she took initiation as one of his disciples and became Sister Christine. Sister Christine eventually traveled to India to teach at Sister Nivedita's girls' school in Calcutta and took charge of the school upon Sister Nivedita's passing. As I've been brought back to Michigan, I am going to explore the cultivating making great humanity within that state and invite others to do it in honor of Sister Christine, who traveled to India from my home state of Michigan to make great humans in Calcutta and India. So as this journey comes into focus, I hope some of you might be inspired to join. I started out sharing with you a vision that Gandhiji had for Kudai Raj, or the kingdom of God on earth. An individual sacrifices himself for the family, the latter for the village for the district for the province for the nation for all. Gandhiji and Swami Vivekananda lived in such a time that sharing that vision all over the world required a lengthy and arduous physical journey. Today, that part of the journey is easy. I know that we're live casting here today, and people from places I'm not even aware of are able to share in this observance of Swamiji's birth. What Gandhiji wished for us, and Swami showed us through his life, is that the canvas upon which to offer the infinite paths to God are available now. These can emerge from people choosing to sacrifice themselves for something that can now only exist in the mind of God, but is available to all. The Vedas, the Bible, and other great spiritual teachings have all said this. The kingdom of God is within you. So before I arrived here yesterday, I drove down to Chicago on Friday and stayed at a place near Lake Michigan so I could work on this talk. I took a walk down to the lake early Saturday morning, and I sat there for a while. Yes, it was very cold, and the lake was frozen over where I was sitting, but I'm from Michigan, and I have a lot of experience being outside in conditions like this. In fact, I find cold winters the best time to leverage the silence of nature to create silence within yourself. But I doubt it was a day like that when Swamiji walked that same path along the lake, which he wrote about in a letter to a young disciple in India. He told of a moonlit night and his mind becoming deeply absorbed and about to merge into samadhi, when he suddenly had a vision of Sri Ramakrishna, and remembering his work and his mission, he turned his mind back to it. His work continues to this day. Swamiji believed that he had given humanity enough to last 1,500 years. He declared, "I will not cease work. I will inspire people everywhere until the world shall show that it is one with God. May I be born again and suffer thousands of miseries so that I may worship the only God I believe in, the sum total of all souls." So my friends, if there ever been a point in our current age to take up Swamiji's commitment to us, that time is now. So I leave you with a last quotation from Swami Vivekananda. All of the power is within you. You can do anything and everything. Believe in that. Do not believe you are weak. Do not believe you are half-crazy lunatics, as most of us do nowadays. You can do anything and everything without even the guidance of anyone. All the power is there. Stand up and express the divinity within you.
Thank you, Jeff. It was a wonderful talk. And you touched many of the points, and particularly a beautiful institution is coming up in Calcutta where you lived, and that is in Newtown. And it will be exactly the replica of the Parliament of Religion. So the people over there won't be able to come over here. They love Vivekananda and they know Chicago because of the Parliament of Religion. And they will go and see, and they will remember that this type of building somewhere is there, and Swamiji gave the talk. This is unique. Only one talk, only one lecture that transformed the whole India. You can imagine the power of the words, that Bhak Shakti, as in Sanskrit they say, Bhak Shakti. When a person is giving a talk, he is saying something, it's so powerful. Then from the negative thoughts that the India and the millions of Indians were having for hundreds of years, that vanished. And Swami Vivekananda gave them that same confidence. And not only that, Mr. Jeff referred to the sister Kristen, that she was very close to Swami Vivekananda. And imagine, 100 years before, one lady alone, she traveled from here, from America to India, to help Swami Vivekananda to give education to the women. Now today is the Indian women, they don't know the name of that lady. But she gave the whole life only for their education. So these are the wonderful things, and I'll be very happy if somebody takes up the cause of the sister Kristen, and in her memory, something over there in America, in Michigan, in Detroit. We all know about Sister Nivedita, but we don't know much about the Kristen. And there are so many American ladies. Some of the friends of Swami Vivekananda, they used to inquire, the Swamiji, who are feeding you over there? Who are looking after you? In America, you don't have anyone. And they don't know Hinduism. So how you are sustaining over there? The Swamiji's answer was, the American mothers, they are helping me. So we have published the calendar with this theme, the American women, those who helped Swami Vivekananda. We, particularly the Indians and the Asians, should not forget the contribution of these American ladies who used to protect Swami Vivekananda. Now, sometimes some people, because they never saw anyone from outside world, and they were curious, the one thing happened when Swamiji was walking in the New York. Suddenly one person who was carrying, driving a cart full of coals, he threw a block of coal towards Swamiji. Swamiji somehow saved himself and asked, why? Why you are throwing the coal to me? He said, why you are not like us? That was the condition when Swami Vivekananda was spreading Vedanta, introducing India, introducing Indian culture in this country. And that is the time when the ladies, they decided to be always with Swami Vivekananda. Because if there were ladies, then they won't do anything. Because of the chivalry, these people will not do anything. So the ladies always used to be with him to protect him, not only giving the food and other things. He never knew how to wear the shoe. The 4 ladies were here, the young ladies, they used to untie and tie the shoelace. Can you imagine? So that is Swami Vivekananda. They considered him not as any god or any holy person, but their son, their brother. That way they loved him. And so much of sacrifice they did. The Belur Math that we purchased, it was also the contribution of 2 American ladies. So this we have remembered in that calendar, that is our President Maharaj, Swami over there, Smaranananda Ji Maharaj, and also the Vice President Maharaj. They have written a very beautiful words after receiving this calendar. They are very happy having this calendar. The friends, we are remembering Swami Vivekananda. And Swami Vivekananda, of course, he was from India. But then he said, do you think I only belong to India? I belong to all humanity. That is true. The Vivekananda, he belongs to all humanity. Our Mahabhog is over, now there will be Arati. When they are preparing, let me sing this song about Swami Vivekananda. Murta Maheshwara Ujjala Bhashkara Ishta Mama Narabandam. Murta Maheshwara Ujjala Bhashkara Ishta Mama Narabandam. The Swamiji's disciple, whom Swamiji lovingly used to call Bangal, because he is from East Bengal. So East Bengal people, the West Bengal people will be calling East Bengal Bengalis as Bangal. Jokingly, Swamiji used to call him, and he was a great scholar in Sanskrit. So he has written this, composed this about his guru. Murta Maheshwara Ujjala Bhashkara Ishta Mama Narabandam. Bande Vedatanu Munjita Garhita Kanchana Kamini Bandham. Bande Vedatanu Munjita Garhita. Bande Vedatanu. We are worshipping that personality who is nothing but the Veda. Veda means the knowledge. What is that jnana? What is that knowledge? Kanchana Kamini Bandham Mukta. He is liberated, he is free from any attraction of these worldly things. So when we call it bandhan, when we call that we are in this world, it is nothing but the attraction for the worldly things. The moment we can withdraw our mind from the worldly objects, including name, fame, physical comfort, and everything, immediately we get the realization of the God. Bande Vedatanu Munjita Garhita Kanchana Kamini Bandham. Murta Maheshwara Ujjala Bhashkara Ishta Mama Narabandam. Koti Bhanukara Deepta Simhamaho Katitata Kopina Bantam. He was not having anything except a lion cloth, but still his power was as if the millions of suns. Koti Bhanukara Deepta Simhamaho Katitata Kopina Bantam. Abhi abhi humkara Nadita ding mukha. Abhi abhi humkara Nadita ding mukha. Prachanda Tandava nrityam. The Hindus, they believe that when the Shiva danced, then the creation was created. Tandava nritya. And the dissolution of the creation is also because of that. And what Swami Vivekananda did, he gave that Avi mantra. Avi means be fearless. We always think, oh, I am going to lose this. Maybe I am losing my prestige, or the people are not appreciating me, all small little thing. You have to give up all that. Then only we will get the love of God. When we are constantly concerned about the little thing of this world, then we cannot get the blessings of God. Bhukti mukti kripa kataksha prekshana magadala bidalana daksham balachandra ghara indu bandamiha naumi guru Vivekanandam Balachandradhara Indu Bandamiha Naumi Guru Vivekanandam Murta Maheshwara Ujjala Bhaskara Ishta Mama Narabandam. जय भगवान श्री राम कृष्ण देव की, जय महामाई की, जय स्वामी जी महाराज जी की, जय स्वामी ब्रह्मानंद महाराज की, जय गंगा माई की, जय स्वामी जी महाराज की। So you got that pushpa, all of them. So there will be pushpanjali, the plate and all that. So I will repeat this mantra 3 times. You also repeat after me. Om Oim Isha Shachandana Pushpanjali Srimad Vivekanandaya Namaha. Om Oim Sach Esha Sachandana Pushpanjali Srimad Vivekanandaya Namaha. Om Oim Esha Sachandana Pushpanjali Srimad Vivekanandaya Namaha. Now pranam mantra. Namasri Yatirajaya Vivekananda Suraye Satchit Sukha Swarupaya Swamine Tapaharine. Again. Nama Sri Yatirajaya Vivekananda Suraye Satchit Sukha Swarupaya Swamine Tapaharine. Hari Om.